Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Today's question was suggested by a viewer anonymously. Amy activates Shelldock Isle while her library contains 0 cards. In response, Nick uses a Wasteland against that Shelldock Isle. Can Amy play the card that she's exiled or not? Okay, so the answer to this question is that yes, Amy does get to play the card that she's hidden away, but I can definitely see a couple of obstacles that might make it look like the answer should be otherwise, which I'll deal with in turn. First of all, once an ability has been activated and has been put onto the stack, then that means that it will go on and continue to resolve regardless of what happens to its source. So that means that the Shelldock Isle being put into the graveyard shouldn't necessarily be seen as something that stops the ability from working. Now, the second objection that I'll deal with is a little bit more technical, and it requires a little bit higher level understanding of the rules involved in order to dispel. And that would be the fact that once the Shelldock Isle has been put into the graveyard, then there isn't anything on the battlefield to tell the game what the exiled card should be. How is it possible then that Amy would be able to play the exiled card when there isn't anything out there to tell us what the exiled card is? And in order to answer this question, we're going to need to recognize the fact that the abilities on Shelldock Isle are linked. In other words, we have one ability that exiles a card and another ability that specifically refers to the exiled card. According to this rule, that templating indicates that these two abilities are linked together. And when we see the phrase, the exiled card, in the second ability, we should understand that to mean specifically the card that was exiled using the first ability. The important thing to notice here is that these two abilities are linked to each other, not to their source. And what that means is that if one of these abilities needs some information from the other one, it can get that information directly. It does not have to rely on the source to be an intermediary. And so that's the reason why this ability is able to know what card is the exiled card, even though the source of that ability is no longer in play to tell us what that card should be. The ability is linked to the one that actually physically exiled the card, so it has perfect information about which card it was that got exiled using that ability. Okay, so this still kind of maybe is a little bit abstract, so I wanted to relate it to another situation that's pretty well known regarding another pair of linked abilities. That situation would be the one where if you play an Oblivion Ring against a Grizzly Bears, and then somehow manage to make the Oblivion Ring leave the battlefield before it exiles the Grizzly Bears, then that would mean that the Grizzly Bears gets exiled permanently, with no chance for it to come back. So why is it the case that with the Oblivion Ring situation, the game is not able to find the exiled card, but with the Shelldock Isle situation, the game is able to find it? And it does kind of seem at first glance that these should be a similar situation with a similar answer. However, the answer is different with the Oblivion Ring situation because of timing. The Oblivion Ring trick relies on having the Oblivion Ring leave the battlefield and therefore have its leaves the battlefield triggered ability resolve before the enters the battlefield ability trigger resolves. And so what that means is that when the leaves the battlefield triggered ability is trying to find the exiled card, it's not able to do that because at the time when that ability is resolving, there isn't an exiled card yet. Rather, the card only gets exiled after the comes into play ability manages to resolve. And so that's the reason why the Oblivion Ring situation does not work, whereas the Shelldock Isle one does. Before I sign off, there is one other thing that I wanted to ask everybody. If you've been following the channel for a while, you probably know that I don't like to leave things high and dry like this. If there's some trick that I tell you doesn't work, usually I'll at least try to come up with some sort of a way that would make the trick work. So if that's the case, what could Nick do that actually would stop Amy from being able to play the card that she hid away? I actually thought of a couple of different ideas, and I'm sure there's a few more that I haven't been able to think of yet. So everybody in the comments, talk about what your favorite way for Nick to stop Amy from playing the card she hid away would be. But that's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again next time for another daily ruling, but until then, I hope you have a great day.